People whose long-term relationship faded. What was the final straw that made you realize it was time to call it a day? After 2 years, she went on a trip. When I picked her up from the airport, she said how much she missed me, and I realized I really didn't. The relationship was toxic from the beginning, but we had a kid and leaving would be a big sacrifice, so I told her that we're going to take 10 months to really focus on improving our relationship, and if we can't agree after that time that even one thing has gotten better between us, I'm leaving. I really worked hard during that time to do relationship work with her, but every time I brought it up, she said all our problems were my fault, so there was nothing for her to do. We were in the exact same place at the end of the 10 months, and I started working on my exit plan. I got to a point where every day I was alone I'd be rehearsing ways to say I want to break up and couldn't bring myself to do it when he got home. At some point I realized that wasn't normal, and for his sake I should just end it before it goes too far. That was a 4-year relationship. My now ex-husband did some contract work for the facility I work at. My co-worker from a different department complimented on how busy I was, and how the hospital was lucky to have me because I did great work. He said to this person, "Well, I don't know how busy she is cause she's always bugging me." You guys know how it is. It crushed me, and made me realize how little he thought of me. I'd sit in my car after work playing on my phone for like an hour because I just needed a break before going inside and dealing with him. I was watching The Big Bang Theory and realized that despite the running joke that Amy can't get any tiny bit of affection from Sheldon, he still managed to be more loving than my then husband. After 17 plus years, and she no longer wanted to put in the effort and would rather spend her time on social media talking with everyone but me and ignoring our obvious issues. So after I finally had enough and took her phone out of her hands and forced a face-to-face, sit-down chat of airing the issues, in the end it was worth it, and never realized how much of a prisoner I felt like in my own home until I had my own life again. Lesson learned: if you ever feel like your partner has checked out mentally, they likely have, and don't put up with the bullshit for the next couple years just because you have a long history together. I promise you, it will only keep you miserable. We lived together but lived completely separate lives. Basically a housemate I shared a bed with. Happened twice to me so far. Honestly, it was the pandemic. It really forced us to actually spend time together, and I realized we kind of just didn't do much together at all. I had spent years thinking it was cool that we kept our own friends and space, but once those distractions were taken away it was just really clear to me that we were more roommates than a couple. I knew it was over when I cared more about his well-being than he cared about his own well-being. I would have moved mountains for him if it made his life easier, and he just continuously put himself in shitty situations. I eventually just gave up. I can't be with someone who doesn't care about themselves. Thank God that's over. Together for 5 years and long distance for 2 of them. I realized one day it felt like just going through the motions when she answered the Skype call. I could see it in her eyes too. We got to a point where we spent more time muted on call so we could do other things, like she was more interested in reading and I was more interested in hoping on chat on game with friends. We would sit in silence with our webcams on and barely look at each other. The flame just went out. I eventually just had to sit down and really reevaluate some stuff. It was a really hard conversation and absolutely broke my heart to tell her. We cried together and had the best conversation we had in over a year. When I realized I was needed and not wanted, constantly trying to make someone happy who didn't want to be happy. I went into the relationship knowing that she liked to drink, and she went into the relationship knowing that I didn't drink any longer, but we really liked each other and wanted to make it work. But when she would drink, she would get angry at me for not drinking, like I was judging her or lording it over her. Which, looking back after years away, may have been true. Maybe I was and just didn't realize it. But she would get drunk and black out. I would clean her up and tuck her in and then go home. Near the end, when this would happen, I would call the next day to check up on her, and the first thing she'd say was, "Are you calling to break up with me?" And the answer was always no, of course not, until the day I just had to say, "Yeah, I think maybe so." Over time, every comment made in their presence sparked an argument. One day I pointed out a simple deck of cards that I thought were pretty cool and related to an activity we shared, and they launched into a tirade about how I was being manipulative and trying to control them. I knew it was over that day, but still desperately tried to hang on for several more months as it only grew worse. It was LDR for 2 years, and his family moved to another country about halfway through the relationship. I was a college freshman and realized that there was little to no chance of us seeing each other anytime soon. And who knew if we'd still be in-person compatible after who knows how much longer. I broke it off after the school year ended. I'm still with my husband, but I can feel myself getting more and more frustrated with the relationship. I want more than he can offer me, and I don't mean that I only want him for what he can provide me. I bring in 70% of our income. I pay 80% of bills and mortgage. I do most of the housework, lawn care, house maintenance, everything really. I wouldn't mind doing all of that if I felt valued and appreciated. I get one full day to be with him and he opted to have a D&D session from 2 to 10 p.m. I constantly hear him say he wants to spend more time with me and he'll call into work, spend maybe 45 minutes with me, then go play games or do something else. I address issues and he'll change the behavior for a couple days and then go back to it. I didn't marry him to have a part-time spouse. He's a very sweet person, and that's what I love about him, but I just don't feel that peace I used to feel in my soul when in the same room as him. He was in the wrong to begin with, he accepted it. I never pointed it out, I just chose to get trampled on instead. He asked to give him some time to fix himself so that he can treat me better. I agreed. 6 months later, he finds an excuse, a screenshot sent by his friend that on Instagram I tagged another friend of mine on a post who happened to a male. All hell broke loose. I ended up as a person with no morals. While fighting to save our relationship, I realized he never came here with the intention to continue. Our pause turned into an indefinite break for him. The moment it hit me, that he's using this pathetic excuse to break himself free of me, I let him go. I asked him twice to confirm if breaking up is his final decision. He said yes and I followed through. I did not beg him to stay after that. That's how my 5.5 years of toxic dependency came to an end. I was in a long-distance relationship and I had this sinking feeling in my stomach whenever the thought of moving came up. Then one day I had a job interview in the city he lived in, which also happened to be a city I had a lot of friends in. After the job interview I hung out with my friends and had a blast, but the sinking feeling didn't go away. I eventually realized I wasn't afraid of moving to the city he lived in. I was afraid of living with him. He was the kind of guy who was into an ambitious woman in theory, but also wanted her to do all of the cooking, cleaning, etc. I realized that eventually I would become his housewife, because he wanted kids and definitely wasn't going to help much. That was not the future I wanted for myself. She was happy where her life was and I wanted more. She lived in her parents' garage, had a job she hated, and a family that didn't appreciate her. She planned to have IVF and raise the child in her parents' garage while working a job she hated with a family that didn't appreciate her. I wanted a nice house, a nice job, a nice life away from people that don't support the things that make me/us happy. To travel and try new things, to not be stuck to the same 30 miles for the next 50 years. Me wanting more in life and her never wanting to change split us up. I was gonna marry that girl, now I just feel bad for her. It started to feel like I was just going through the motions. We'd go out, get dinner, come watch some bullshit on TV and play on our phones. Started to not be able to have a conversation without forcing it. I hated hanging out with her friends, and she was pressuring me to move in with her, which made me realize I had to make a decision and figure out if it was what I really wanted. This all happened in November, so it's been a lonely pandemic, but I think I made the right choice. A co-worker was talking about a great time he had with his partner and I realized I hadn't felt like that in years with my partner. I went home after work and ended. We both agreed it was for the best. When I asked her to change one thing in the relationship and she treated it as a joke and acted like a child about it, for a good month everything I was doing was wrong. Literally everything. She started being nasty, hurling abuse, then she was paranoid I was cheating or up to no good. She would always act like she was above me in some way. She comes from a fairly rich family and my family is working class and her friends were full of themselves, like I wasn't good enough for her. A few weeks before I broke up with her I was with my sister and mom and her at a restaurant and her friend seen me and my sister at the counter paying. She went up to my sister like she was ready to knock her out because she thought I was out cheating. Lol. Shit like that really hit my nerve. I bottled it up but it really started to deplete me and frankly pissed me off. I gave her a talk and told her to stop with the behavior and to get her friends in line. It was too much and I wasn't doing anything to warrant it. Same thing kept happening. Constant accusations, constantly demeaning me. It was like she didn't listen to anything I had said, so I dumped her. I'm glad I got out of it because I was becoming her doormat. And she became so nasty once I dumped her. Good riddance. I am a bird watcher. Lame, I know. And we were on this trip and I wanted to do this bird watching tour. It was like a 2-hour thing. And he kept putting it off and then eventually I just went alone. It was by far the best part of my trip. I was really hurt that he didn't have a few hours to do something I wanted to do. Even though I trekked across several beaches to find the right surf spot for him, it was just one of those things where like, he was shitty, but not indefensible and I realized I could do better and be happier. And I am. He hit me, several times. Blocked me from finances, controlled which friends I saw. I stayed because I loved him. We didn't work well together and eventually we were separating. Then he tried for the first time in our marriage to be a decent husband. That hurt more because I knew he could be decent and sometimes was. He just chose not to most of the time for years. I decided that either his turn leaf was a facade that would fade, or it would stay and I'd resent him for past behaviors. But either way I wasn't sticking around for that. Don't stay with a significant other who hits you. There's no coming back from that. When she broke up with me for the 12th time, we had a long-distance relationship, and whenever we had an issue or a disagreement, instead of engaging in a conversation with me about it, she would say we were done and shut me out for 2 or 3 days before coming back, and manipulating me into groveling for her forgiveness. The last time, I just said no to going back and stuck to it. She freaked out and tried to drive 6 hours to my place at 2 a.m. I got a call from her mom saying she had left in the middle of the night as a heads up, and, upon finally getting a hold of her when she was just a couple hours away, I was able to convince her to turn back. That relationship fucked me up for a while, but once I began dating my now fiancé, it was unbelievable to me how wonderful a real, loving relationship with healthy communication can be. He just could not talk about anything else except sex. My grandpa died and he was like, "I'm sorry," and then a couple hours later, "You should get fucked by 3 dudes and let me watch on camera." I was already realizing he only saw me as a sex object, so I just slowly started ghosting him. We were together for close to 6 years, and it just simply faded. You have this idea of the person you want to be with the rest of your life, and if that particular person doesn't check off the boxes that are important for a healthy and sustainable relationship, then it is best to move on. I liked going to social gatherings, she didn't. I liked going out on dates, she would much rather take naps and be in her room all day. I came clean and told her that I just couldn't see us together moving forward, and it was mutually understood. It was for the best, because the last question I asked myself was, do I see myself marrying her and growing old with her? And if the answer is anything but yes, it's time to move on. Once I discovered myself hoping she would die, I was horrified by this thought and understood I really had to end our marriage, so after a few months I went to live on my own. I had put up with him saying he didn't want me but also refusing to let me go, and also sending messages to other women. It wasn't quite sexting, but it was definitely more than just friendly. I called it quits when my friend at the time, now partner, basically showed me what it was like to be respected, and I realized I actually preferred his company. Drugs. 8 years. It wasn't always drugs. For the first 6 years it was everything I had wanted. Then meth came along and destroyed us both respectively. Found out she was starting to become a bag whore, sleeping with people for drugs. In retrospect, being sober now for a few years, I look back and realize there really wasn't much substance to us. We were just kind of there, in a shitty town barely doing enough to get by. Now I've moved and realize all the joys I missed out on. I started feeling weird every time we got intimate and really did not like the thought of him touching me. We started dating at the end of our senior year of high school and even stayed together after graduation, but because we lived in 2 different towns the relationship turned into a long-distance one. We rarely saw each other since neither of us drove or had cars. Every time we did meet up somewhere, his appearance would change drastically. He gained so much weight and started shaving his head, a look I'm not too fond of, which resulted in me losing attraction to him over time. And we had different goals in life. He just wanted to live in his grandmother's trailer, play video games all day and eat junk food, while I wanted to work on my health and move out of my hometown. I eventually broke up with him in 2018. When I realized he would never make room for me, everything had to be on his schedule, in his way. "Hey, let's go to dinner. I'm not hungry yet. I don't want to go out." Because he only wanted to sit in his room, not our room, and play video games / listen to music / chain smoke. He then went through that with his longtime, now ex, GF, and we were talking about it. I mentioned, "So, exactly like what you did to me," and light dawned on Marblehead XD. We are friends, no romantic interest in one another, but it was a sad type of funny to listen to him bemoan her when he had done the same things to me. It also gave him a new view on her. I really hope she is doing better and finds happiness. He cheated on me. He'd done it before, but the affair partner told me this time. I don't know why, but I stopped being able to forgive him with that one. It was the last straw. All of my attraction, the life goals I'd had with him, and our history seemed to fade immediately. I tried getting even, and then realized it was a toxic and disgusting place to be. It's the only time I've ever chested on someone, and I came clean immediately. So, I packed up and left. It was one of the worst periods of my life, but I'm happily married now, and the last time I checked in with him, he was on the opposite side of a string of breakups due to porn addiction and cheating. So, I never really needed to try to get even. He did that for himself. 6 years, but I don't feel like it was wasted. I feel like I learned a lot about myself and people like him. I knew it was over, but a day after my grandfather had passed away and she couldn't even give me a call to see how I'm doing cause she was at a Halloween party just soured the whole relationship in my mind. I was worried she was in trouble when she ghosted me for the night. Good times. Thanks for listening. Subscribe for more daily videos.